Hello, welcome everybody. This is Kanban New Zealand through me, and we also have Kanban Australia through Dan here. So he's got the meetup groups in Sydney and Melbourne. We are sharing the events. Very excited that you're all here. If you are new, and I think there are quite a few folks here, most of our meetup events are recorded and on the Kanban New Zealand YouTube channel as well. So there are some pretty cool topics you can look up, free upskilling, free learning. But we all like to also always come together here as a bit of a community, just catching up with everybody else, see what's going on. So who is free afterwards, feel free to hang out. I think we have a few people with fancy mugs here this time. They becoming a trend. And with this, I'm handing over to Dan.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to mention that we have Kanban Australia coming up on the 31st of October. So that's in Sydney this year. So check it out. There's a QR code there if you wanted to get your tickets or, check it out. The speaker lineup's up there now. So we've got some great talks and workshops and things on all things Kanban, from beginners off to more experienced practitioners as well. So there's quite a range of talks, even if you're just getting started with Kanban.
Is it 10% off?
I haven't got the code sorted out, but I'll get that organized by the end of the meetup.
Okay, cool. So you will get a 10% code, those that are here
Yep.
today, if you like.
I know what the code will be.
Yeah, there is also a 15% group discount right from the page if it's 5 people or more. Yeah, and so over to Cam. I know Cam from quite a while ago from DIA, and we also worked together. No, we didn't work together, but he brought me into Internet NZ for some training. And he's been a big Kanban fan ever since. And from Internet NZ, he also did a talk at the time that was just when the pandemic started, I think, and it was hybrid.
Yeah, that's right.
Only a hybrid event at the time. And so now he's back and I'm super excited because I know that when he speaks, it's going to be amazing. Dan, over to you.
Excellent. Thanks for the introduction, Silke. And let me just move things forward here. So, hey, welcome everybody. I've got a little talk for you called Getting Your Ducks in a Row. And we're going to be talking about Upstream Kanban and Product Ops. What is Product Ops, you might say? Well, stick around, you'll find out. So what I want to go through today, generally introduce Upstream Kanban. You may have had some exposure to it. You may, have been using the Kanban method for delivery purposes. We take it a little bit further with Upstream Kanban and also going to be covering a very quick introduction to product operations. Or product ops. Looking to discuss why Kanban fits really well with product ops once I've introduced you to it. Showcase a little bit about how we've been applying Kanban to our product ops here at Storypark, which is where I'm a product manager at the moment, and just share some lessons learned, some other helpful resources that I've gained over the last little while. This is by no means a full, complete pack of here's all the answers. Product ops is very much an evolving practice as we speak. So I'm learning as well. And I'm here to share what I've learned so far, and there's plenty more learning to go. Just a little bit about myself before I jump into things. Technical product manager at Storypark. We do early childcare management software. Pretty much ethos is to help every child fulfill their unique potential by connecting and empowering their community around them. So we do a lot of tools to connect parents and teachers around children's learning. So pretty interesting job. Very playful, which is quite fun. You'll see in my slides a little later, the playfulness. And as Silke mentioned, I've been doing Kanban and product all over the place. Worked at a open source software company here called Silver Stripe. Department of Internal Affairs, looking after the New Zealand Open Data Platform for Internet New Zealand. So I've sort of jumped around central government, public sector, private sector, not-for-profit. And the thing in common has been, just doing good product practice and using useful methods like Kanban. I went through the Kanban management professional training with Silka, and actually in a previous life, I was a software engineer. And I've been a community manager as well. So there's a whole raft of skills that all kind of rolls up into product, which is what I'm into now. If you need to touch base with me, you can hit me up on my LinkedIn or email over there. All right. So let's get into these topics. So if you've been in the Kanban space for a little while, you've probably seen this infographic covering the Kanban principles and practices. So we're going to be talking a little bit about those, and also this thing called product operations, which if you can see from this very quick Venn diagram, because who doesn't love a Venn diagram, let's be honest. Product ops sits smack in the middle of product, customer success, and engineering. So it's kind of the thing that joins all that together, and really it's all about enabling product and evolving the product system that you have at your organization. Which is a good time to probably introduce product ops. Just very quickly in the chat, if you've come across product ops before, do you want to just pop a 1 in the chat? I just want to see all these little ones stream up the chat. There may be very few of them. So there's a couple there. Cool. Excellent. And if you've heard of Upstream Kanban, do you want to put a 2 in the chat? So I can kind of see there's a few people that have heard of both. Cool. So it's not a complete foreign topic, but I'm sure we will get a bit out of it. As I mentioned, it's very much an evolving practice at the moment. If you jump onto the interwebs and Google it, there are a lot of people talking about it. A lot of quite prominent folks in the product space. So your Marty Kagans, your Melissa Perrys, and so forth, if you come across them. If you haven't, go look them up. There's a lot of different takes on it, and a lot of people have different angles on it. So I'm going to give you sort of the boiled down version, and then sort of let you know the version that I've been following for the last little while and applying. So to sum all that up, here's a bit of somebody else's take on this. So product operations is the discipline of helping your product management function scale well. So this is about scaling and enabling, surrounding your team with all the essential inputs to set strategy, prioritize, and streamline ways of working. So it's a little bit like this playground, really. Somebody turns up, builds it, sets up the framework for play, but doesn't restrict how you play. And so, your product managers are probably going down the slide there. I don't know. Another way that I like to look at it myself, for me, it's the practice of applying product management to your product management practice. So it's treating how you do product like a product. So within your product management system in your organization, you're going to have internal customers that have problems, just like you have external customers that have problems. And you want to find out ways to help them solve their problems. So, if you're a product manager really bogged down trying to find data, product ops can be the thing that helps with that. If you're, constantly needing to recruit folk for, say, user research, that's extra administrivia that a busy product manager may not have time for. Product ops can help make that process nice and simple and easy. So it's about enabling. So a few points here. This might sound very familiar. If it does, product ops is probably going to be quite helpful. Too much feedback, don't know how to manage it. alignment between product and your go-to-market teams like sales. You know, your sales and marketing are going, when did that launch? I didn't know about that. So it helps smooth over the comms between those different parts of your product system. It's hard to know what features are actually doing well or which features you should actually get rid of. You may or may not be measuring them. Consistent approach to running experiments, like I mentioned. Do you have product managers that are scrounging for data to support and gain evidence for why something is on their roadmap? Again, product ops, part of it is getting the data in order so that you can actually make really good decisions. Too much process, not enough process. So if any of those sound familiar to you, product ops might be something that you could look at. Death by bullet points on this one, but I'll go through it. Good news, you're probably already doing these things, but product ops is about doing these things that I'm going to cover with some intent and a continuous improvement in mind. So product ops can help with connecting across functions. So things like onboarding people into how you do product in your organization. Quite often that falls to product managers or some poorly documented knowledge management tool over here to the left. So a good product op function actually can help bring people into the product organization, get them up to speed fast, give them the templates, give them the processes that they need to just hit the ground running. Especially helpful if you're scaling up. It can smooth the process improvements around product discovery right through to launch. So process management gets a bad rap sometimes, but you know, everything we do is to some degree a process. It's just whether it's more or less rigid. And what's actually important is that you right size your processes for where you are in your organization. If you're a startup, a 400-page manual of process probably not going to be that useful. But if you're like quite a large multinational corp, having no process is going to be complete chaotic Wild West as well. So it's about finding that right balance. And again, good products ops people or functions can help sort of find that right balance. Usually product ops are managing your tools, roadmaps, and rituals to coordinate that roadmap. So it's getting people together, looking after the roadmaps. Again, your product managers sort of quote own the roadmaps, but quite often you'll find that if you've worked in some sizable organizations, if there's not a good good set of rituals around the roadmap and massaging it and prioritizing it, everything becomes a negotiation. You do it different every time, and can be quite time intensive. So finding ways to make that nice and smooth is really good. Product ops remove bottlenecks. Some of these words start to sound familiar. They sound very Kanban-y. Park that for later. Help product managers stay focused on the strategic why. Consistent and predictable access to data and insights. So a lot of it is pulling together the data that you probably already have, packaging it up in a way that's digestible to product managers, so that they can just get the insights they need, make the decisions that they need to. I know personally, as a product manager, I love data, love using data, but I spend a hell of a lot of time trying to find the data, crunch the data, make decisions from the data. It'd be nice if it just turned up and I could just interpret it. That would be really nice. So again, product ops is doing that. Looking after user feedback, streamlining your communications, and some other things as well. Product ops, again, it's an evolving space, and you can think of it in two different ways, I think. So you could think of product ops as a role. So you might have a product ops manager, or product ops function, depending on how big your organization is. But you can also think of product ops as a practice that you embed across everybody. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Very much depends on your scale and what your culture's like as well. So at Storypark, we don't have a product ops function, but we are building out a product ops practice across our product managers. And again, that might be something that we scale as we grow. But for now, we're just getting into it and making use of it. It's usually quite small and high leverage. So even in some larger companies, they might have a product ops manager, but the things that they get into get used by everybody. So very, very high leverage on the things that they get into. A really good tuned system and process is going to help. And they're thinking about the whole. So they're tuning that product system to benefit everybody, especially that customer as well. They're really into getting that flow of value through the system quick to the customer. Again, very Kanban-y. And so as I've been learning more about product ops and having a background in Kanban, these things just started to click together really quite nicely. What product ops is not, it is not product management theater, roles for role's sake. It's not an over focus on process and governance. There's sometimes a bit of a worry, product ops, oh yeah, that's just doing process, right? And your process is involved, but it's not the be all and end all. And as I mentioned earlier, right sizing your process is good. If it's all about process and governance, that's a little bit of a red flag. You're probably not quite operating product ops as intended. Product ops is not there to do the dirty work of product managers. Sorry, product managers. It's very much about enabling them to do their best work. And it doesn't replace the need for your user researchers, your data analysts, etc. It's not a replacing role, as I mentioned. Think of it more of a practice. In fact, if you can build a good product ops practice that joins together your user researchers and your data analysts together, that's going to be really powerful. So yeah, it draws from a lot of things. And it's going to be different in every organization that implements it as well. So one of the big things for today is I'm going to show you some things. Don't just take the things I'm doing and apply them where you're at. Take the concepts and try them out, which is the Kanban way, after all. Start with where you are now.
I was just going to say that sounds like Kanban.
Yep, yep. And that's why this talk of Kanban mixing with product ops fits really, really well. The two just are best buddies. There are lots of product ops frameworks and things out there. I've been looking at a lot of them. The one that I'm using at the moment, and that may change depending on what else I learn in the future, is this one here. So it's the 3 pillars of product ops, and it covers these 3 things here. So if you think about your business data and insights, so that's your internal data and information and insights. And then you've got your customer and market insights, so that's your external data, so your customer feedback, competitor research, things like that. And then your processes and practices. So within those 3 things, you're kind of capturing, you know, the bones of product ops. So again, great book. I've got this in my resources slide at the end. Melissa Perry, I think it's by, and Denise, can't remember the last name there. How terrible. I've got the book around here. Oh, here we go. Denise Tillies. There we go. Well worth a read. Again, take it for what it is. Don't just sort of apply it over the top, but I've found so far this has been pretty good. And I've also got a link in the slide resources at the end to quite a good product ops checklist that you can run across your organization to kind of see where you're at. Highly recommend doing that as well. So park this in your brain. We're going to come back to it a little bit later. But first, we're going to talk about Upstream Kanban. It's more than just delivery. So been playing with Kanban for quite a while now. And especially as a product person, Upstream Kanban, or the stuff that happens before your delivery team gets it, has been something or somewhere that I've played quite a bit. And so that's all the things like discovery and prioritizing your roadmap, triaging ideas, discovery and testing your ideas and experiment, everything before the code gets cut is all upstream Kanban. And one other part that I like looking at as well is this idea of the Kanban lens, because I quite like this 4-piece here because it paints Kanban as something bigger than just delivery. It's thinking about a holistic pathway from a customer need to that customer's need being met. So if you haven't come across this, just very quickly, it's a way of looking at work. So if you think of work as a flow of knowledge, of value going through to a customer, and then that sequence of knowledge work is a series of discovery steps of knowledge. And that word is a key one. Again, another reason why I was linking product ops with Kanban, this idea of knowledge discovery. Because very much in the product space, when you're going through those early customer interviews and ideas and value props for new products, it is very much a knowledge discovery process. You're trying to find out if you should do something or go further. Point 3, knowledge work is a service, and that's scalable as well. So it could be different functions in your organization providing services to other functions in your organization to get things done. And so again, taking this Kanban concept and applying it to product. To get product done, you've got to work with everybody. So, I'm going to need some marketing services as a product person, and I'm going to need some support services from our customer success team. So everything is an interconnected bunch of services effectively to get a product out and launched and be successful. And that takes me to point 4. Your organization is just a big network of services, all providing services to each other. Very much a way that I like to think of what the modern organization is these days. Cool. So I won't spend heaps of time on Upstream Kanban. We are in a Kanban meetup, so I'm hoping that you have come across it. A lot of good reads out there as well if you haven't, but that's just a taste. Key takeaway on that is Upstream Kanban is all the things that happen before, but can also be, it's relative as well, because your downstream might be an upstream of somebody else, if we're thinking about your org as a network. Cool. Just having a quick look in the chat here. Any interesting stuff? I think, Silky, you're doing some summarized points. Thank you. Cool. That's nice, Cam, but I'm here to hear about Kanban and product ops. Okay, let's have a look at that.
And Storypark.
And Storypark. We'll get to that bit. There are examples coming. So generally, what I want to go through now is those little connection points that I spotted between Kanban and product ops and show you why I made the connections. And then we're going to go through some examples of recent work where we've applied it as well. So we've got some particular examples I can walk you through. Cool. Here is a big squiggly diagram of red arrows. Here is the 3-stage model from earlier, and here's our lovely Kanban infographic. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think the key takeaway here is that if you have a look at these, there's some really easy to draw connections between these two things, product ops and the practices and principles of Kanban. First and foremost, the big circle there is pretty much how I would go about implementing product ops in an organization. Those Kanban change management principles, fantastic. So just working out what we're already doing in the organization, because you're probably already doing some product ops. You just haven't labeled it that, or you haven't connected this person with this person. So I think do a bit of a stock take of your organization through the product ops lens, find out where all those pieces are, and start there. which is a very Kanban way of doing things. Same with acts of leadership. Like no one said, Cam, you are the product ops person. I just got on and did it because I saw it as valuable. It's useful to me as a product owner or product manager, useful to my peers as product managers. So I've just got on and done it. And we are building it up over time. So that's an evolutionary change thing as well. So yeah, good place to start. Things like visualize. Again, it doesn't say have a Kanban board, it says visualize. So when we get over into product ops space, that might be visualizing your insights, visualizing your different workflows. I'm going to show you some examples later on where we've kind of taken some poetic license around visualization of our work, which is not the normal Kanban board way of doing things, but it helps us visualize where we're at in our product commercialization practice, basically. Things like manage flow. The missing piece there is manage flow with data, if you've read that piece. So again, your data internally, very, very useful in product. We're talking about setting up really good product practice and process. Process is kind of a good stand-in for policies. So that fits nicely. Feedback loops. Well, that's our customer and market insights, isn't it? So yeah, a lot of things here line up very, very well. Cool, cool, cool. Now, I'm just going to bring this up. If you've been in product land a little bit, you may have come across one of these. This is a lean roadmap. And so the idea behind this is it's a strategic roadmap with the things that are happening right now on your roadmap over to the left, things that might happen next in the middle, and things far out in time over to the right-hand side. So it's sort of a measure of time and priority and what's next. That kind of sounds like a workflow to me. In fact, if you take this and flip it, it's effectively Upstream Kanban. It's just backwards. So we do that, you can tack your lean roadmap onto the beginning of your Kanban flow, funny enough, because it's all about, if we go back to knowledge, Kanban being about knowledge discovery, it's exactly what the lean roadmap is about. The things in the future are things you have less knowledge about. And as you bring things forward through their lean roadmap, you learn more about it and decide to actually do it. So again, product and Kanban, best buds. Cool. We've used this quite a bit as well. So we kind of have Kanban applied at our different teams at the team level. So this is the flight levels from Klaus Leopold. Sort of a nice accompaniment to Kanban and how it might connect across different levels. So our product team is effectively working in this level 2 space. So we've got that upstream Kanban, we're coordinating the different teams. And then if we think about the level 3 strategy stuff, effectively that's our OKRs coming down through our SLT. So we're connecting the dots through a lot of that sort of stuff. We're applying a lot of the cadences to our product ops space. So you can also think customer value should be the first thing. Yes, exactly. Thanks, Dan. So this thing scales as well. So some of these meetings are strategic meetings. So your strategy review, your ops review, risks at an org level. But you can apply things like a replenishment meeting at a product roadmap level where you're replenishing in new ideas that are coming. And so we apply this at a individual delivery team level, but then we take these as well and apply them to our product practice. Cool. Next useful thing, classes of service, but more particular is the cost of delay. And so these particular classes of service from Kanban, the graph here effectively is impact or cost and time. And so for things like expedite, very high cost, better do it soon, and things like that. Point being here is that looking at cost of delay as one of the attributes that you use to prioritize your roadmap is very, very useful, especially if you can get dollar figures or roughly dollar figures on that stuff, because, you know, in a roadmap meeting with execs, coming armed with dollars saved or dollars made, it's a very easy way to bring things onto your roadmap from a commercial standpoint. Maybe different in, say, nonprofits, you might have different motivations, but yeah, very, very useful. Cool. So those are just some of the Kanban things that we're applying across onto product ops. And now I'm going to take you through the actual things we've been doing at Storypark. So you might have noticed the duck theme. That's our little logo here at Storypark. We've got our team over at the ECA, Education Australia conference at the moment in Sydney. They've got a Guess the Ducks competition going on there. Everything we do is about ducks, apparently. So things we've been doing. So where we started at Storypark, the first thing we implemented that was product opsy type thing was roadmaps, and not new roadmaps, but having a roadmap instead of multiple roadmaps in multiple places. And a lot of teams going, what's on the roadmap? Where is the roadmap? Is the roadmap up to date? Yeah, it's totally up to date. I put it in that slide deck and, oh no, it's not up to date. We've changed. Happens everywhere. So what we've opted to do is we have one source of truth of what the pieces are on the roadmap, but we serve up different views to different audiences. And so just having a single roadmap where you say, well, that's the roadmap, like it or lump it. There are a lot of different functions around your org. They all take in information differently. Package it up in a way that makes sense to them. So for our product team, we've got quite a detailed view. Gets right into the weeds. And then we've got different slices for our customer team. Now they're all the same items, and we're using our good old friend Jira. We'll put that aside. It's just a tool, people. It's just a tool. We're using the Jira product discovery tool, but effectively it's just another layer of stuff on top of old school Jira. But what it means is that we've got objects that represent the things on our roadmap. Once we collect all the knowledge that we gain on those tickets. So that's that knowledge discovery thing popping up again. And then we just serve up different cuts of it. Sales team sees one view, customer team the other. It's all the same stuff. It's just the stuff that matters to them in more or less fidelity. And we made it self-service as well. So again, we've got it in one place. They can see their cut of it and they can do it whenever they want. So it's less coming and asking, where's the roadmap, or having another meeting going through the roadmap. We still have touch points with them, but it's visualized, it's there. They can see it. They can see the status of it, which again, is one of those great sort of Kanban principles as well. The visualization becomes the state of the work. The work is well managed, and therefore people can self-organize around it. So that's what we've done at a roadmap level. So that's worked quite well. Still refining it a bit, but that was where we started. And then the next thing we added that comes from product ops is this idea of a product status framework. You've probably seen these before. I did a stint in central government. Discoveries, alpha, betas, and all of that was pretty commonplace. But what we're using these for in Storypark is effectively, or where the need came up. So if we take the product approach, Sales team had a need. Their need was, when can I talk about things? And so we worked with them to figure out a way that we could shorthand that a little bit, make it easy. And so what we trialed with them was this 4-step label for new product features or new major product launches, which effectively said, if it's in discovery or alpha, please don't discuss it sales. If it's in beta, you can talk about the concept. Hey, it's coming. Can't sell it to you yet, but it's coming. And general availability is, where's your checkbook? So the great thing here, though, is that for each of these steps, we worked with the sales team to define what was meant at the step, so that we knew what we were talking about, they knew what we were talking about. We were all on the same page, which is very, very useful. And we thought, great, now we've got a shorthand way. We can put these labels on the work that we're doing. We don't have to have, like, more and more meetings to go, where is that feature? Because we can go, well, that feature's in beta, which means sales, you can go talk about it conceptually. Or, hey, this is launched, go sell it. Or don't talk about it. So yeah, very useful. Worked great from a sales and account management perspective. So we took it a step further and we started to have discussions with our customer success team and our product marketing team and various other functions across the organization. And basically asking them, what would you expect at each of these steps? Sales does this. What would you expect? So for example, when we're in the beta phase on a new product launch, our customer success team has said, well, at that step, we'd probably expect to be able to see the training documentation so that we can get up to speed before you launch so that we can support it easily. Great. So what we've built out is a bit of a matrix where everyone is on the same page, that everyone knows what each of the 4 things actually means. They can then look across it and go, okay, at that step, we know sales are going to do this or aren't going to do this. We're going to do that. So it just helps set up expectations for product launches. So that's been really helpful. But if you take it at its core, it's just a flow. It's just another workflow or another Kanban flow. Visualized a little bit differently, a little bit higher in terms of its granularity, but for all intents and purposes, it's a workflow. So yeah, we've rolled that out across the organization. That's been very successful. Moving right along to some more fresh stuff and really badly drawn childish drawings. But hey, it's Storypark and we're all about child education, so I can get the crayons out and make slides for y'all. This is a little bit more of a more traditional Kanban flow, I guess you would say. So kind of that more linear board type flow. In fact, some of these are the steps on our Kanban boards as a team, but in different places. So going back to Upstream Kanban from earlier, this is generally our upstream flow. So pretty standard stuff. I probably don't need to go through each step blow by blow. But the concept here is that we're taking in ideas, we're going through an assessment type process, we're gathering more knowledge about the work until it becomes an option, we're prioritizing it, potentially based on cost of delay, and then we're confirming it on our roadmap. This part here in the purple actually came from an interesting conversation we had with our engineers, of all folk. Who were asking us, hey, product people, how do things get on the roadmap? How do I get a thing on the roadmap? What's going on? Because from the outside, it just seemed like we were just putting things on the roadmap. There wasn't a visibility into how we were making those decisions and the steps or the flow that it was going through. So we put this together. This is obviously a slightly truncated version, but underneath each of these, we've got a lot more fidelity of information about the steps it goes through, how we do it, what rituals we do, which comes back to the Kanban cadences. So we didn't add more meetings. We just looked at the meetings we were doing in product already, applied the cadences. No extra meetings, but meetings with purpose. It's good. We've got feedback loops that come from further downstream. So for example, our flow towards our roadmap, we might confirm a piece of discovery work, which then flows through our discovery teams. Each of these discovery and delivery teams have their own Kanban flows. What happens in there, up to the team. It's a bit of a black box at this level, but the teams have applied their own Kanban approach to this. We might run some discovery, get some feedback, flow that back into our assessment until we've got enough information to make a decision. Yep, we want to go with this. We want to cut some code. Or we might discover, maybe don't do this, in which case we might flow all the way back to a new idea and round and round and round. So once we've got stuff confirmed on the roadmap and we've committed to delivery, then we go through that sort of more traditional Kanban method, delivery teams type stuff, which is not the topic of this, so I will not be talking about that. What I will be talking about is what happens afterwards. Mentioned earlier, you've got upstream and downstream, but sometimes your downstream can be an upstream of another downstream.
Cam, just to give you a quick heads up, because you mentioned you have to drop off at 7. It's 15 minutes to 7.
Yep, that is totally fine. We are good for time. So yeah, your things that are downstream usually have an upstream. And so we kind of have a traditional upstream downstream as you've seen before. So upstream being prioritizing stuff, downstream being delivering stuff. But things happen after you deliver the product. It's not just I've delivered, cool, done. Thinking more holistically, we've got to launch the product. So we need to go to market plan, and then when we launch it, and then we've got to sell it, and then we've got to support it, and then we've got to do product marketing to get product adoption. So there is more than delivery going on if you take the full product system. I couldn't come up with a name for that, so I've decided to call that a river delta, because you've got upstream, downstream, and then it sort of splits. So
A river delta of services.
Yeah, river delta of services. So you can take that one. So this is pretty much how we're doing product, or what our sort of product model or operating model kind of looks like at Storypark. So the next thing I'm going to show you is very much work in flight right now. It's looking more at our product commercialization, and it's taking a huge poetic license on Kanban's visualize principle or practice, sorry. Ta-da! A whole bunch of things. Let me explain, because it looks quite confusing. When we're talking about product commercialization, there are a whole bunch of things you need to consider. There are a whole bunch of people involved, and lots of decisions to be made. And so this particular model that we're just working on at the moment, and again, I can share the model because it's how you implement the model that is the thing that matters. It's the secret sauce. But generally, what we've got here is these concentric circles. The stuff that's on the outer circle are where you have to do work on options or coming up with ideas. So some of that sort of more discovery stuff. As you move inwards towards the pond, you are making more decisions to your product launch until you launch into the pond. And if I just go around, when you're thinking about product launches, you need to be considering the business objectives, the needs of the customer, the benefit to the customer, what features you're going to produce, whether you're going to make or buy the product, how you're going to brand it, your target customers, where do they live, who are your competitors, your current customer base, are we going to risk cannibalizing that with this new product? How are you going to package it? How are you going to price it? Are you going to promote or discount it? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to incentivize people to buy it? And how are you going to support it? This is the big package of knowledge that you need to pull together to launch a product. This is why product management is such a beast of a thing, basically. And across all of these things, you also have to coordinate with heaps of different functions, roles, services, like we talked about earlier. And so what we're looking at is using this as a bit of a visualization on where we're at on a particular product launch. So it's not your typical board. It's not your typical linear flow. It's a circular flow of a whole bunch of things moving inwards. As we move into on the edge, we're on the edge of a decision. We make decisions. So for example, while on the outer circle here, we're at pricing and packaging options. As you move or flow inwards, you're making a decision on the pricing. So you're getting closer to the pond or jumping into the pond. We've cross-referenced that with our stages from earlier. So discovery, alpha, beta. So as you move in, you're moving further down towards launching the product. Let me bring that in. So we could be at different stages. So you might be more ahead with your strategic duck, maybe not quite made the full decisions, but you've got some options with your value creation duck. You totally nailed your segmentation. You haven't even started your customer base, and your go-to-market's not started yet. So we might be at different points on the circle. So each one of these colors is kind of, if you take a slice inwards, is like a Kanban flow heading towards customer value. But you don't get the customer value until they all line up and launch. So it's sort of the least complex way we could visualize a very complex thing. And who doesn't like a concentric circle model? Cool. And then once we've got all our ducks in a row around the edge of the pond, you've learned enough, or you've gained enough knowledge in each of those different workflows to be able to launch the product, because you've covered all your bases. And then we launch the product. So that's kind of a reasonably hot off the press model that I'm playing with at the moment. As I say, it's taking huge license on the concept of visualize from Kanban, but it just kind of shows that you don't have to follow having a board. You can visualize stuff however you like, as long as it's adding value to your teams. So this for us, very, very useful, because we're having to coordinate so much stuff. So we just work out where our ducks are for each of those areas. And then when all the ducks are in a row, that's product launch go time.
I really love that last concept you talked about, because when we were at Internet NZ and we did the static workshop, at the end the sales team didn't have a left to right board, but they had a sales funnel going up to downwards, and
exactly
like that.
exactly.
So it's all sorts of boards you can find.
I'm just reading a question here. Is the make or buy decision referring to your products or to the assets you need to make your products? I would say both. I mean, it's quite common when you are doing digital products, and again, we're talking digital products here, let's be honest, to either completely hand roll it with your dev team internally, or to buy something, white label it, and adapt it for your needs. So that's kind of what we're talking about there. How much scale is needed before product ops is useful? I'm doing question time now, but we're just about done, so it's cool. Large order thing. Now it looks like a basic iterative. Yeah, you're right. It's valuable at any scale, because you can implement it at any scale. So again, it's about getting the right size of implementation for the size of the org is the key thing here. So rolling out a huge, like setting up an entire product ops team in a 20-person product startup does not make any sense. You're definitely not going to get any value there. And flip side as well, if you don't have enough in a large organization, you're probably not going to get the value there either. If you've got one person beating the drum going, ProductOps is great, and it's a 2,000 person org, no one's listening, that's probably not going to be helpful either. So trying to find that right scale, very key.
Dan, talking to Dan Rendo here. You've had a few other questions or comments in the chat. Is there anything more you want to know?
No.
That's cool. We can come back to that. I'm just going to wrap up, and then we
Cool.
can throw down some questions, and then I'm going to take off, and y'all can chat about ProductOps and stuff. Cool. Okay. So after all of that, we're still playing with this in at Storypark. This is just where we've got to so far. There are lots of other things we want to get in and play around with. So maybe topic for future talk. Hint, hint. The stream is not always nice and smooth. The ducks do have to paddle very quickly under the water sometimes. So just some ugly ducklings that we came across as we were implementing, or I don't know, maybe they're swans, I'm not sure. Number one, I mentioned it earlier, don't just follow what the book says. Take it as a starting point, try out some of their experiments and things, iterate and measure. The measure thing, very, very key. It applies to ProductOps and Kanban. In fact, all these things do, which is the topic of the talk. So tailoring your roadmaps to your audience, also mentioned that earlier. They're not going to meet you where you are. If you go, we have a roadmap, here is the roadmap. If you don't know where it is and you out of the loop, that's your fault. Product management is like 80% a comms job internally. So make sure you know your audience, make sure you're communicating what's going on your roadmap in different ways to different audiences. That is incredibly key. Too much or not enough process is subjective. What is too much to one person is not enough to another. You're going to spend a lot of time negotiating this to get your right size that I talked about earlier. So yeah, pay careful attention to that one. Implementing can be a bit slow going, but very high leverage once you get there. A couple of other nuggets. We really found that our customer-facing teams loved that 4-step product stage phrase framework. So being able to have an account manager basically going, we don't have that yet, but it's in beta, such a shorthand way for them to have a discussion with a customer. And then they can say, oh, beta for us means this. So it means they can have a conversation, which ordinarily might have been a little bit awkward, and have it with confidence. So yeah, really, really handy for customer-facing teams. Even to the point where they can still say, oh, we don't have that. We're doing discovery work on that at the moment. So it sets the expectation that it's not coming tomorrow, but we're looking at it and it's about here. So good expectations for the customer, good expectations for the internal teams. It's been a win all around that particular little framework. Getting dollar figures on cost of delay, incredibly powerful for roadmap conversations. Sometimes hard to do, so you have to take a bit of license on that. So, it might take talking to your customer support team to find out how much time they waste on that thing, and then roughly what that would cost in people time, and then use that as your dollar figure and go, hey, if we delay this any further, we're burning X grand a month on this. Do you want to burn X grand a month, or do you want to do this work? It's the most costly thing that we're burning at the moment. So yeah, very, very useful for roadmap conversations. And it can go both ways. It can be, the amount that you're saving, but it could also be the amount you might gain from a new feature or a new product. So put those things together, drives really good conversation around the roadmap table. And lastly, you're probably already doing a lot of this stuff already. So focus on connecting up the parts. So you may already have a customer research team. You might already have a data analyst team. Connect them up. Play that connector role. Part of ProductOps is to connect those disparate pieces to get the goods. And by all means, user research and data getting together, you're going to get absolute gold as a product person for making really good decisions. Lastly, a couple of good resources here. Again, we're talking about Upstream, so grab yourself, if you haven't already seen it, the Essential Upstream Kanban from Kanban University. Free download on that one. And the book I'm recommending at the moment, Product Operations, Mel Superi and Denise Tillies. And I mentioned earlier, there's a checklist, Product Ops checklist that you can run your org through to see where you're at. The link here will take you straight to that. So go grab that. And yeah, put your organization through the ringer and see where you're at. So yeah, 2 good, useful resources. And thanks very much. That's pretty much my chat today with y'all.
Thanks, Cam. And apart
Thanks,
from
Cam.
this intriguing mark, I might get this to you at some point.
The duck.
It's the flow expert duck.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Cool. So we are 1 minute in. Do you have time for some Q&A?
Yeah, I can probably do 5 minutes or so. I've answered a couple of questions along
Yep,
the
you
way,
did.
but
Cool. Folks, just unmute and ask your questions right now.
you can also post in the chat if you don't want to talk. While we're waiting for that inevitable 10 to 15 seconds while people decide, should I, shouldn't I?
I actually think that Dan had a question there about, is it everyone connecting with everyone or connecting somehow aligned with the flow of value through the org to the customer?
All that connecting up.
It's just the third last comment in the
Yep, I'm just finding that now.
How many people are in your organization?
I think we're about 50, 60. So not small, but not massive. But we're what I like to call the awkward middle size.
Do you ever all meet together?
Virtually, yes. We're a little bit geographically spread. We probably wouldn't be talking down in the weeds with that many people. Just looking at your comment, Dan.
Yeah. So what is the criterion for having a conversation a bit deeper than everybody at a town hall?
Yeah.
How do you restrict that?
In our flow, like if I go back to because if we're talking about that slide there, I think we are the river delta thing. A lot of this stuff, like if we're going back to functions as services in the organization, then each of these is effectively a service that are being performed by a particular team in the organization. And so let's say something like, well, let's go to let's go like say customer success and support. So if they need to have a conversation, say with product, that's either through a feedback flow, and we've got systems for collecting that and triaging it and massaging it. So we might do it through that. Or we might spring up a bit of a conversation about something that's not working. It really depends on how big the issue is. Same with, say, sales. Sales might go, hey, we're hearing out in the market, everyone wants a widget. It's really important that you make that widget. And then we'll take the request for widget, pop it in the collecting ideas, because effectively we take ideas from everybody in the organization. But then it goes through the same triaging process as everything else. So it'll come in. If it's strategically aligned with where we're going, great, it's an opportunity. Then we'll assess it. Hey, does it make sense? Does it fit this quarter? Maybe it's an option. Cool, it's an option now. Now we're prioritizing it. Have we got a cost of delay on that? Hey, sales, what's the value of the deals that we're losing by not having this feature? Cool, cost of delay. Excellent. If it's higher than other costs of delays, probably a good candidate to confirm. So that's how you might get something in there and have those conversations across those different functions.
So that's a picture of this process that ideas go through, not necessarily who gets involved in the conversation. So sales could be still involved in putting ideas, opportunities, assessing, and so on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's sort of part of the art and science of product management as to how you wrangle those conversations. Because I mentioned a lot of product management is comms work. You know, getting the right people, facilitating the conversation, working out who the stakeholders are, and dealing with all of that sort of stuff. Again, didn't go into the depths of product management in this talk, but that's a whole other thing too. So cool. I can probably do one more question, and then I'm going to need to skedaddle, we'll say.
I've got a question. Thank you for that. I am
Cool.
1 year into my first product role. I've been an engineer and then a UX person, so it's been a really
Nice.
interesting year. Thank you. Yeah, it's cool. It's very overwhelming, being on the other side of the delegation. I am curious. One thing I'm finding is that my engineering team, they're amazing. They're super short staffed, and because of that, like, they're really struggling to see the value in kind of estimating work. They're just kind of like, hey, work comes to us and we just have to do it. And that's really hard for me to communicate back to my stakeholders, because I've got engineers just saying it'll be launched when it launches. And they don't want to take the time to do like even t-shirt sizing. So if you had one tip for kind of selling this to them, like what would you do?
So you're currently t-shirt sizing, if they can be bothered.
We aren't even doing that. Yeah.
Yep. I've kind of been through both parts of that. So like for a long time, I was in Scrum doing all sort of frameworks like that. It's all very much velocity and estimating, etc., etc. You may have already been through that. I think the best thing that we ended up doing at past roles is dropping estimation and moving to statistical analysis, which again is a very Kanban-y thing to do. If you've got, are you using like a software tool to manage tickets, things like that?
We're using ClickUp, which is essentially exactly like Jira. I'm not familiar. You called it statistical analysis. I'm not familiar with that.
It's the basically it's the Kanban metrics. So go check that out. It's taking the lead times of all your work. Now, if you've got a software tool, you're going to be time stamping the work from when it starts in the team to when it finishes or gets delivered. And that's quite a good predictor of future things once you've got enough data behind you. So if, say, the team's already been running for 6 to 12 months, you've got 6 to 12 months worth of work data in your system that you can analyze. There are tools that do it. You can also just get a spreadsheet and get some formulas. Monte Carlo simulation. That's very good. So basically, you can use that past data to get an idea of forecasting future delivery. So you might get a lead time and a range. And so when stuff comes at you as a team, firstly, make sure it's the most important stuff to be done. And then once you've made the commitment to do it, you can use that data to relatively predict a range in which it will be delivered based on past performance. So that would probably be my advice. We use that at Storypark quite a bit for our teams. We've used it for like stakeholder conversations with SLT and sales, where sales are like, when is it done? And we can go, well, it's based on past performance. It's likely to be between here and here, and we'll give a confidence interval. Saying a date is just a silly way of going, because things
that's
change.
not going well for us.
Exactly. But if you can give a range based on evidence and take the data-driven approach, you're taking a calculated risk as to when something's going to be delivered based on some pretty good data from historic delivery. So that's a really useful thing to do.
Do you think it's important, and this is kind of a dumb question, I feel like I know the answer already, but do you think it's important that the tickets are really, really like well defined? Like, do you need that, or is it okay if they're a little bit undefined, a little bit loose? We're a 10-person startup, so we're kind of flying fast and loose with our ticket definition of ready, definition of done, all of it.
if they're solving the problem, the ticket's just a vessel for the knowledge work. So
Cool.
yeah. So a bit of a myth is that, oh, you need to have all the tickets exactly the same size or it doesn't work. That's a
Yeah.
complete myth, because using the statistical analysis and forecasting, it's taking it's doing averages, so it's accounting
Awesome.
for those variations anyway in the forecasting. So you're going to have big work and small work. You don't have to be all packaged the same size.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. I think we might have to call that as last question, unfortunately, folk. Hey, thanks, Dan and Silke, for having me along again.
Hey, we have to thank
Thanks,
you,
Cam.
Cam. Awesome event. Thank you so much. Lots of learnings. And folks, if you have more questions to Dan and myself, we both AKTs. Feel free to stay online. We have a bit of time, I guess, up our leaves to stay. And Cam, thanks so much. I will catch you for lunch at some time, and I'll let you drop off now. So
Yeah, cool. Thanks, everybody.
thank you. And
Thank
I
you.
keep the recording on for a bit. Maybe there are interesting questions that we might cover here as well. Right, so we are in the big space now without any sharing. Are there any more questions? Or you can also just hang out, say goodbye, not say goodbye, say hello.
Silke,
Yeah.
on the face of it, this was a presentation about ProductOps and how it's comparable to just regular old Kanban.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you've been posting in the chat, regular old Kanban. Like, is this just regular old Kanban? Is it that versatile? It could be applied to so many things, including ProductOps.
What I love about Kanban is that it's very, very, very contextual. So you cannot just apply it by the book, and that's probably the big difference to agile frameworks and methodologies, and why we like to say that it's not an agile methodology or framework. It's hugely contextual, and you always have to apply to your own context. And I think, so what I often also say is that the upstream, for me, is the magic to good delivery. And most teams, organizations only know Kanban in the delivery space on a team level, but actually you can apply it, and you've put that in a chat at some point, across the organization at different levels. And the way we scale is actually across product hierarchies, end-to-end flow, customer to customer, and also cross teams. So it's really everywhere in the organization. And the way that we look at an organization as interdependent services tells the story too, right? And so it really is, going back to my first point, so contextual, and in the upstream, which is the magic to delivery, which is often forgotten, because the upstream, the product manager space, is often a big black hole of a backlog, and nobody knows what's actually going on in there. And that is the magic to actually preparing that work well and make it transparent. And then the delivery will go a lot more smoothly, and anything down the delivery as well, because that's also often a black spot. Dan, would you want like to add something there?
Yeah, because there's a couple of folks that are online from Singapore. I think a few have dropped off, but I see Thomas and I think JJ's there that were in Singapore from my talk, I think it was last month, about Kanban across the organization. And it's interesting that what Cam was talking about, because it kind of relates to what I was talking to the folks in Singapore about, around, you know, Kanban across the organization and how you can link up those different aspects. Like in that talk example, I had not just technology, but product, as well as marketing and sales and HR, legal, all of that kind of stuff, how they all sort of can link up and to produce that final, you know, product release, if you like. So, you know, there's quite a lot of interplay between them once you sort of you know, start to scale it out across the organization a bit further.
I think when you start at a team level, the one thing I do first is probably kind of exploring what is actually going back in the upstream. Going on.
Upstream's really important because it's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out, you know, so you know, if the upstream's really humming along and very effective, that makes the delivery all the more effective and the outcomes so much better.
Darren's still online. Darren, you've just been to the Kanban for Design and Innovation class. Anything you want to add to this question?
Not really else. I've had a bit of a bad day today, but
oh, sorry.
Yes, that's why I was a little bit late coming in, but I did take away from that.
Get your mug and
yeah, I got the mug. Thank you. I thought I'd better have it handy in case I get in trouble for not having it here. But I was quite interested in what Cam was saying, especially around his little ducky model and how all different parts of the business seem to have their inward focus, and as they drill down through their system to the point where they end up all the duckies swimming in the same circle. Kind of made sense because, you know, for most of my job, I tend to think only sort of in a linear and one sort of viewpoint because, you know, we do products, we don't really care about what our customers are saying because, you know, they're always screeching or hollering. But to actually see it from a different point, we're actually looking at different parts of the business, actually saying, well, we're going to use Kanban for this because that adds value to this part of the project or this part of the work that you're doing. So I took that away today. I thought that was actually really interesting. You know, beyond his badly drawn rivers and creeks, but I actually thought it was a good concept.
I think that was fair enough, given that it's Storypark, you know, and you need to.
I've never heard of them, sorry.
Yeah. So after the classes, is there anything you would do differently in terms of the upstream and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, to be fair, I think I don't know if I've gotten to a point where I can make any recommendations about changing. More than I'd rather just try and implement what's there to start off with. And I think, you know, when you talk about that essential Kanban, even just starting there, but that essential upstream is a good place. I particularly like the idea of tokens and allowing people to only have so many, because that tends to be what happens in most places that work. People get drowned out or overwhelmed by the amount of work coming in, and the moment you start restricting that and actually puts a little bit of vigor around that, the better off the teams seem to feel and the more productive they are. So to me, upstream is probably one of the most important thing to be worried about, and not so much how much stuff you can put out the door, because, you know, like anything, you can put out a lot of rubbish, high volume rubbish, or you can have low volume, high quality. So what is that?
Very true.
What does that look like?
Yeah. Anyone else about this idea or any other comments or questions?
Hey, hi.
Hi,
it's Thomas here.
Hey, Thomas.
Hi, Dan. Yeah. So I'm actually preparing for a Kanban SG talk in November, which somewhat resonates with the concept today of using upstream and downstream as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to use some of the ideas that Cam has shared earlier, which you know, we are practicing also with a customer service team, not a ProductOps, but a customer service one. So yeah, I think everything gels together.
Feel free to connect with Cam on LinkedIn. I'm sure he's happy to cooperate.
Sure, yeah.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that, Thomas. Let us know how it goes.
Cool.
Yeah.
There was also Robert who had his hand raised.
Yeah. If I can summarize what I heard in Cam's presentation in one sentence, is basically it's complicated and complex to deliver products, and so you need to get your ducks in a row, and when you've done that, you can go on ahead to the next steps. this is what I've retained from that, which is a very waterfall kind of approach in with respect to my own experience. My own experience concerns organizations where the product development life cycle tends to be extremely long, years, in other words. And in the course of those years, the upstream decisions that might have been made in year 0, in year 3, well, the hypotheses, the conditions, everything has changed. And so there needs to be regular feedback coming through from the upstream to the lower downstream activities. So this, in my experience, is something that needs to be taken into account
I
in
think
the
he did
way
that.
in which you
From
manage things.
from my understanding, he did that as well. Because it's all
Well,
evolving.
I'm not talking specific. He's not here to get more information, so I'm not talking about his organization.
Okay.
My interest is to understand how other people, in their own experiences, when there are long lead times for delivering things, how they handle this kind of need for regular loops where you adjust the decisions that had been made. How do people handle that?
Yeah.
I think I've got some experience on that, Robert. I think a couple of things is, one is, first of all, making that lead time really transparent, because a lot of people have a feel that it's slow, but they don't actually have a number around it or anything else like that. And so a lot of the time, just putting numbers around it, you can actually start to attack the problem of that whole product life cycle is just too darn long in certain markets. Because quite often, I've seen a lot of orgs that we have here in Australia is that there's a bunch of waste and dependencies and handoff that, you know, turns a 3-month thing into a 12-month thing, you know. So sometimes it's a case of making that transparent and working through the internal problems. Other times there are some complex domains. I know there's some complex domains. I know some friends have worked in the medical device sort of area where it takes a lot of not just research, but also testing and verification and all of that kind of stuff before it gets launched.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
So
can't, in the limits of our knowledge today, you can't compress that. If you had 100% flow efficiency, it would still take years. Yeah,
that's true. And in that case, it's also somewhat different, is that even for you, it would take years, but your competitors would still take years as well. So the product life cycle is just a lot longer, you know, it's just naturally a lot longer. So I think you need to be, it introduces a whole raft of other problems around knowledge management and other things around that whole product life cycle, you know, because the people who start the product, you know, might not be the same who end up finishing it and all of that kind of stuff. So there's probably a whole lot of additional considerations to take into account when you're doing those kinds of things. But still making sure the transparency is there is still very important to make sure people, you know, don't miss handoffs or don't, you know, misunderstand when things are coming down the pipeline. I'm not sure if that's helped you, Robert, but yeah, it's sometimes those industries are not easy.
It's a big issue. It's not something to solve in a few minutes.
Yeah. There maybe one more question for in terms of the meetup, and then Becky, I think the raised hand is you need some job help, I've heard.
Yeah, well, kind of. So next month I'll be launching it's probably about 6 squads, and I've just finished making position descriptions for a role I'm calling the Kanban delivery leader, because we're doing Kanban, not Scrum, obviously. So if there are people based in Sydney or Melbourne that are looking for roles, they're particularly, most of them might be fixed term perm, then yeah, I'd love to hear from people. So if they could
Would you
reach out.
take people from New Zealand?
No, we're going to be co-located in Sydney or Melbourne on the East Coast of Australia.
Fine, I didn't like Australia weather anyway. It's horrible.
I was actually thinking of
You
Jared.
possibly
All the
cope
animals
living in
are-
Queensland of 22 degrees. Just shocking.
Wife's
Okay.
So in case
Australian. Can
someone
she
is
just
asking-
vouch for me?
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, make a LinkedIn post and we'll all share it.
Okay.
And that was very bad facilitation because I kind of asked for the last question and then jumped onto Becky knowing what she was going to offer. Was there any last question?
Not from me, but thanks for putting it on.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. It's always really cool to mingle. Stay calm and Kanban.
Thank
Cool,
you.
cool.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
all at the next meetup, which will be a lean coffee in November, and then we'll see you again in next year because we've got the Kanban conference in October.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye. Until then.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
You see ya. I need to drop Silka.